There's a power within you that society has taught you to fear, repress, or squander on empty pleasures, an energy so potent that, when misdirected, it can destroy entire empires, but when understood and transmuted, can transform an ordinary man into the architect of his own greatness. Napoleon Hill called this force sexual energy, but make no mistake, he wasn't just talking about the physical act. He was unveiling humanity's best-kept secret that within the most primal impulse resides the divine spark of creation. Have you ever wondered why history's most powerful men seem to possess an inexplicable magnetism? Why great leaders, visionary artists, and revolutionary entrepreneurs exuded a presence that transcended the ordinary? The answer wasn't in their apparent talents, but in how they related to this fundamental energy pulsing at the core of every human being. They discovered what Napoleon Hill documented after decades of studying the most successful men of his time, that sexual desire, when elevated from its most basic expression, becomes the driving force behind every great human achievement. But we live in a society that has taught us the exact opposite. From childhood, we're conditioned to see desire as something to be instantly gratified, consumed without reflection, wasted on fleeting impulses that leave us emptier with each experience. The entertainment industry, pornography, the culture of instant gratification, all conspire to keep you trapped in a vicious cycle where your most precious energy is drained before you even realize your true potential. It's as if they're deliberately keeping you from your own source of power. Napoleon Hill realized something the ancient alchemists already knew, that sexual energy is life force at its most concentrated. It's the same force that makes a seed break through the soil and grow towards the sun, that drives the perpetuation of species, that moves mountains and builds civilizations. When this energy is wasted on momentary gratifications, whether through compulsive masturbation, superficial relationships, or the incessant chase for new stimuli, you're literally throwing away the fuel of your greatness. Think for a moment, how many times have you felt completely drained after giving in to base impulses? How many times have you promised yourself you'd be different, that you'd have more discipline, more focus, more energy to pursue your dreams, only to find yourself again enslaved by the same patterns? This isn't a character flaw, it's ignorance about the true nature of the force you carry within you. It's like trying to fuel a Formula One car with low-grade gas and then wondering why it doesn't reach its top speed. The secret Napoleon Hill discovered wasn't the repression of this energy, but its transmutation. The difference is crucial. Repression is denial, struggle, internal conflict. Transmutation is acknowledgement, honoring, and consciously redirecting that force towards higher purposes. It's like taking the steam that would normally escape through a pressure valve and channeling it to power a mighty engine. The energy remains the same, but its application becomes infinitely more productive. When you begin to perceive sexual desire not as an impulse to be satisfied, but as an indicator that a powerful creative energy is moving through you, your entire relationship with this force transforms. Each surge of desire becomes a reminder that you possess within you the same energy that created great works of art, built business empires, and gave rise to the most beautiful expressions of the human spirit. The question isn't whether you have this energy, we all do. The question is what you do with it. The great masters of antiquity understood this intuitively. They knew that the man who masters his base impulses isn't depriving himself of pleasure, he's preparing himself for experiences of an intensity and depth that completely transcend superficial pleasure. It's like choosing between an artificial sweetener that offers momentary pleasure, followed by unease, or a nutritious meal that nourishes body and soul for hours on end. The choice seems obvious when viewed from this perspective, but our society has trained us to always choose the artificial sweetener. Napoleon Hill observed that the most successful men he studied had one thing in common: they possessed a magnetic presence that attracted opportunities, people, and resources in an almost supernatural way. They weren't necessarily smarter or more talented than others, but there was something in their energy, in their way of being in the world, that made them irresistible. This magnetism wasn't a mysterious gift, it was the direct result of how they managed their sexual energy. When you stop wasting this energy on fleeting satisfactions and begin to consciously accumulate and direct it, something extraordinary happens. You begin to radiate a presence that other people feel, even if they can't quite explain what it is. Your ability to concentrate multiplies. Your creativity explodes. Your confidence becomes unshakable because it no longer depends on external validation. It emerges from within, from the acknowledgement that you are in complete command of your most fundamental forces. But this journey isn't simple, and this is where most people give up. Because when you decide to stop being a slave to your impulses, all the unconscious patterns that have governed your life begin to surface. It's as if you've been using this sexual energy as a form of self-medication, an escape from uncomfortable feelings, an avoidance of larger responsibilities. When you remove that escape, you have to confront everything you've been trying to avoid. This is the moment you confront your shadow self, all the aspects of yourself you've chosen to ignore, all the emotional wounds you've tried to numb, all the fears holding you back from expressing your natural greatness. It's a painful process, but an absolutely necessary one. Because sexual energy, at its highest form, is also the energy of truth. It doesn't accept illusions, tolerate self-deception, or allow you to continue living a diminished version of yourself. Imagine a warrior who spent his entire life fighting with a dull, heavy sword, believing it to be his only weapon. One day, he discovers he can sharpen and balance it, transforming it into an extension of his will. Same warrior, same fight, but now with an infinitely more effective tool. That's the difference between unconsciously using your sexual energy and consciously transmuting it. And here's something fascinating that Napoleon Hill documented: the more a man learns to master this energy, the more it multiplies. It's as if the universe recognizes you're a good steward of powerful forces and begins entrusting you with even greater resources. Your ability to attract opportunities increases. Your power to positively influence others expands. Your access to intuition and creativity deepens. It's not magic. It's the natural consequence of finally using one of nature's most potent forces as it was intended to be used. But let me be clear about one thing. This isn't a journey of denial or repression. I'm not talking about becoming an ascetic who denies all the pleasures of life. I'm talking about you becoming the master of your own experience, someone who consciously chooses how and when to express this energy instead of being controlled by unconscious impulses. The difference is that now you act from conscious choice, not unconscious compulsion. Think about the times in your life when you felt most powerful, most creative, most connected to your purpose. If you're honest with yourself, they probably weren't moments right after you'd squandered your sexual energy. They were moments when that energy was pooled and directed towards something bigger than yourself. They were moments when you were operating from your full power, not a diminished version of yourself. Napoleon Hill discovered that the most successful men had an intuitive understanding of this. They knew there are periods for accumulating energy and periods for expressing it, periods for contemplation and periods for action, periods for withdrawal and periods for expansion. They lived in harmony with these natural rhythms instead of constantly draining their energy in purposeless pursuits. And if you're wondering how this practically applies to your life, let me paint a picture for you. Imagine waking up in the morning, not with the feeling of just surviving another day, but with a vital energy that makes you feel you can conquer any challenge. Imagine having a mental clarity so sharp that solutions to complex problems arise naturally in your mind. Imagine possessing a presence so magnetic that people naturally gravitate towards you, wanting to hear your ideas and participate in your projects. This isn't fantasy, it's the natural state of a man who has learned to work in harmony with his fundamental energies instead of against them. It's what happens when you stop being an unconscious slave to programmed impulses and become the conscious director of your own life force. Now, if this message is resonating deeply with you, if you feel that finally someone is speaking truths you've always intuited but never knew how to articulate, I need to make a request. Subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell, because what you've just heard is just the tip of the iceberg. In the coming weeks, I'll be sharing practical techniques, specific exercises, and even deeper insights on how you can begin your own transmutation journey. This isn't information you'll find anywhere, and it certainly isn't something our society wants you to know. But if you're ready to reclaim your personal power and discover what it truly means to be a man in the deepest sense of the word, then you need to be here for every new piece of content. Your transformation depends on the consistency with which you expose yourself to these truths, so ensure you don't miss any part of this journey. Returning to our exploration, there's another crucial aspect. Napoleon Hill identified the relationship between sexual energy and financial prosperity. It might seem like a strange connection at first glance, but when you understand the nature of this energy, the relationship becomes obvious. The same force you use to create life is the same force you use to create wealth, success, and abundance in all areas. Think about the most successful entrepreneurs you know. They possess a passion, an intensity, an ability to persevere in the face of obstacles that goes far beyond what would be rational. Where does this force come from? It comes from the same source, the fundamental creative energy that, when not squandered on lesser gratifications, becomes available to pursue and materialize larger visions. When you're constantly draining this energy, you simply don't have enough fuel for the ambitious projects that could transform your financial situation. It's like trying to build a grand house with materials you're constantly selling to buy candy. You never accumulate enough resources for the larger project because you're always spending everything on immediate gratification. But when you learn to conserve and transmute this energy, something remarkable happens to your relationship with money and success. You develop the patience for long-term projects. You gain the mental clarity needed to identify real opportunities amidst the noise. You cultivate the persistence necessary to navigate the inevitable rough patches that every serious endeavor faces. More than that, you develop what Napoleon Hill called financial sex appeal, a magnetic energy that attracts investors, partners, and opportunities. People sense that you possess something special, an inner strength that inspires confidence. They want to be associated with this energy, to participate in the projects you lead, to invest in the visions you articulate. This isn't manipulation or charlatanism, it's the natural result of operating from your full power, instead of a diminished version of yourself. When you're no longer squandering vital energy on purposeless pursuits, it becomes available to fuel truly meaningful projects. And meaningful projects, executed with full energy, tend to generate extraordinary results. Napoleon Hill also observed something fascinating about the relationship between sexual energy and intuition. He noticed that highly successful men frequently made decisions that seemed to defy conventional logic, yet proved brilliant over time. They possessed access to a form of knowledge that transcended rational analysis, a wisdom that emerged from a deeper connection with their own inner energies. When you're constantly dissipating your sexual energy, you lose access to this intuitive wisdom. It's like constantly having static interfering with the signal of a highly sophisticated radio. You might pick up a few fragments of information, but you never clearly tune into the full station. But when you learn to conserve and transmute this energy, your intuitive capacity sharpens dramatically. You begin to feel when an opportunity is genuine or when someone is being dishonest. You develop an almost supernatural sense of timing, knowing when to act and when to wait, when to speak and when to be silent, when to take risks and when to be conservative. This isn't superstition or magical thinking. It's the result of finally having enough energy to process and interpret the complex subtleties of the information constantly arriving through your senses. When you're no longer using all your vital energy just to function at the most basic level, it becomes available for higher order processing and perception. And here we arrive at a crucial point. The journey of transmuting sexual energy is fundamentally a journey of self-knowledge. Because when you stop using this energy as an escape, you're forced to confront who you truly are. Beneath all the conditioned patterns and avoidance mechanisms, often we discover that we were using sexual gratification not just as pleasure, but as a way of not feeling our loneliness, our anxiety, our sense of inadequacy, our fear of failure or success. When we remove this avoidance mechanism, all these emotions and fears come to the surface, and that's precisely the point where true transformation becomes possible. Because you can't transcend what you're unwilling to face. You can't transmute energies you're constantly avoiding feeling. The process of conserving and redirecting sexual energy inevitably puts you face to face with all the aspects of yourself you've been trying to avoid. And this confrontation, however uncomfortable, is where your real power resides. Napoleon Hill understood that truly powerful men aren't those who never feel fear, doubt, or insecurity. They are those who have learned to feel these emotions completely, without being controlled by them. They've developed the ability to be present with any internal experience, without needing to escape through distractions or instant gratification. This presence, this ability to be completely present with oneself, is what generates real magnetism. People are drawn to those who are completely comfortable in their own skin, who aren't constantly running away from themselves, who radiate a deep acceptance of their own complete humanity. And when you develop this presence with yourself, your presence with other people transforms completely. You become someone people want to be around, not because you're trying to impress or win them over, but because they feel they can be completely themselves in your presence. You offer the rare gift of being genuinely present, something that has become exceedingly scarce in our age of constant distractions. This is one of the deepest ironies of sexual transmutation. The less you need external gratification, the more attractive you become to others. The less desperate you are for validation, approval, or satisfaction, the more naturally these things flow your way. It's as if the universe responds to your inner completeness by offering you even more reasons to feel complete. Napoleon Hill also realized that the men who mastered this energy had a completely different relationship with time. They didn't live in the constant urgency of satisfying immediate needs. They could think and plan on much longer horizons. They had the patience and persistence necessary for projects that might take years or decades to mature. This expanded temporal orientation is crucial for any significant success, because truly valuable achievements, whether building a solid business, developing an exceptional skill, creating deep relationships, or contributing meaningfully to the world, all require the ability to trade immediate gratifications for much larger rewards in the future. When you're constantly being pulled by impulses demanding immediate satisfaction, you never develop this capacity for long-term thinking and action. You get stuck in cycles of instant gratification that keep you running in circles, always chasing the next hit of momentary pleasure, never building enough momentum for truly transformative projects. But when you learn to transmute this energy, you naturally develop the ability to trade lesser pleasures for greater ones, the immediate for the lasting, the superficial for the profound. And this ability, more than any specific talent or circumstantial advantage, determines whether you will live a life of meaning and fulfillment, or a life of distraction and regret. As we approach the climax of this revelation, I want you to understand something fundamental. Everything I'm describing isn't abstract theory. These are practical principles you can begin applying immediately in your life. The transmutation of sexual energy doesn't require complicated techniques or years of preparation. It only requires the conscious decision to stop wasting your life force and start directing it towards purposes that truly matter to you. Start simply by observing your patterns. When you feel sexual urges arising, instead of automatically seeking gratification, pause and ask yourself, what is this energy trying to tell me? What kind of creative force is moving through me at this moment? How could I channel this energy into something that would bring me closer to my most important goals? Sometimes, you'll discover that the sexual urge is masking a need for genuine emotional connection. Other times, it may be signaling that you have pent-up creative energy that needs to be expressed through some meaningful project or activity. Often, it may be indicating that you're avoiding some important responsibility or challenge in your life. The point isn't to never have sexual experiences again, but rather to have those experiences from conscious choice, not unconscious compulsion. It's the difference between being driven by your energies and directing your energies. It's the difference between being a slave to forces you don't understand and being the conscious master of forces you've learned to work in harmony with. When Napoleon Hill studied the most successful men of his time, he discovered they weren't special people born with extraordinary gifts. They were ordinary people who learned to use in extraordinary ways the energies we all possess. The only difference between them and the mass of people who live mediocre lives was that they understood and applied principles that most people ignore or squander. The principle of sexual transmutation is arguably the most powerful of all these principles because it touches the very source of human life force. When you learn to consciously work with this energy, you gain access to reserves of personal power you didn't even know you possessed. You discover you're capable of levels of focus, creativity, persistence, and personal magnetism that seemed impossible when you were operating from a diminished version of yourself. And here's the deepest truth of all: you don't need to become someone different to access this power. You just need to stop diminishing yourself through habits that drain your life force. The power is already there. The energy is already. The capacity is already there. You just need to stop wasting it and start directing it consciously. Imagine yourself 6 months from now, having consistently applied these principles. Imagine possessing an unshakable energy that sustains you through any challenge. Imagine having a mental clarity that makes complex decisions surprisingly simple. Imagine radiating a presence that naturally attracts the right opportunities and people into your life. Imagine being completely comfortable in your own skin, not needing external validation to feel valuable and powerful. This isn't an impossible fantasy. It's the natural state of a human being who has learned to work in harmony with their fundamental energies instead of against them. It's what you become when you stop wasting the fuel of your greatness and start using it for the purpose it was intended. Napoleon Hill left us a roadmap for this transformation. He documented, with scientific precision, how the most accomplished men of his time discovered and applied these principles. Now it's up to you to decide whether you will continue living as a diminished version of yourself, always wondering what could have been, or if you will finally claim the power that has always been rightfully yours. The choice is yours. The energy is waiting. Your greatness is waiting. The only question that remains is, are you ready to stop wasting your life force and start using it to create the extraordinary life you came here to live? The spiritual secret behind sexual desire is not the denial of desire, but its elevation. It's not the repression of energy, but its conscious transmutation. It's the understanding that within the most primal impulse lies the seed of the highest human achievement. And when you finally understand this, not just intellectually, but in every fiber of you, you become the alchemist of your own existence, transforming the lead of undirected impulses into the pure gold of a life lived with purpose, power, and profound meaning. This is the true legacy. Napoleon Hill left us the understanding that we don't have to accept mediocrity as our destiny. Within each of us is a force capable of generating miracles, of creating abundance, of inspiring others, and of leaving a lasting mark on the world. The only thing separating us from this realization is our willingness to stop wasting that force and start using it as it was intended to be used. The time to begin this journey is now. The power to transform your life is in your hands. The question isn't whether you have what it takes, you do. The question is whether you will have the courage to use it.